Hey babes, my name's Hannah.
And my name's Chasity.
Welcome back to Bookish Babes. Today we're going to be giving you guys recommendations of books for people who don't really read often. This is something I came up with because I recently read a book that gave me the idea. I felt like this was something that it was a book that everybody could enjoy even if you didn't read all that often. And then we came up with a few other ideas. And so this would be good if you're trying to get into reading, if you have a friend or a family member and you guys want to connect over something but they don't really read a ton. These are books that are easy to follow. You know, nothing too emotional, nothing too heavy, something that you could just pick up and get through even if you are not like an avid reader. The first one I want to talk about, the one that gave me the idea, is the Song of Achilles. I know I've kind of talked about this a lot on the channel recently.
Yeah, I mean, this one popped up on my list too. I was thinking about putting it on my list too. So yeah, I totally agree. It's
an old story that has been rewritten, and I think that it's very digestible for everybody to read. I think that a much younger audience than myself could have read it. Male, female, reader, not reader. I think that everybody could enjoy the story.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Absolutely. I think the first one, okay, so the first one that I chose, I just recently finished. It's The Comic-Con by D. Lagasse. I adored this book, and it was super easy to jump into. It was such a fun world. I think it definitely would speak to any kind of like movie or comic buff. So I definitely just think this would be so fun for anybody to just pick up and jump right into this world.
Yeah.
I think it was definitely an easy read.
And like you said, it's like kind of a nice cross between people who really like comic books but want to get into reading. It might be nice for them to pick that up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my number 2, I have Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna, but really anything by Kristen Hanna.
I second that.
She writes great like contemporaries, and they're once again just something easy to follow along with. I've always found it easy to connect with her characters. She doesn't deal with topics that are difficult for other people to relate to in some way, shape, or form.
No, she always writes really good, relatable characters with like really good stories. They're very, very easy to like dive into. You just kind of get lost in these.
And I like her books because they're not usually super romance heavy. So if you're not a romance reader, you would still like these books. Like this, Firefly Lane is a story about like friendship and a story about friends growing up together. And I think that that's something that everybody can relate to. So yeah, really her books are good for people who don't pick up books often.
I agree. The second one that I chose was The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory. This one is more of like a rom-com, and when I say rom-com, I really do kind of use that loosely because like it starts out at like a baseball game, and even though it is like romance, I feel like that's not necessarily just like the center of the story, and I feel like it's just like an easy read that anybody can enjoy. And it's funny. It's and it's more about like family and like the connection of friends, and I just really enjoyed it, and I think that a lot of other people would enjoy it, and like if you're not an avid reader, it's not something too heavy to dive into. Yeah.
The next one I have is Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. I don't know that I've talked about this one very often. Usually when I talk about her, I talk about some of her other books, but I think this one's really good for most readers because even though it is a romance, it deals with less of like, there's not a specific trope, if that makes sense. So it's not specifically like a friends to lovers. It's not specifically the missed communication trope. Because I feel like sometimes when it's really heavy on one trope, it can kind of irritate people if it's not a trope that they're into. This isn't super heavy on one given trope, so I think that a lot of people could read this and enjoy it.
I don't think I've read that one by her.
It's really good. It's like a dual timeline, which I love those, and I think that those are really easily digestible too. I feel like sometimes dual timelines are really easy for people to digest because there's less like interpretation for the characters and where they're at now. You get to see where they've been. So I really like that too for newer readers, or honestly even for myself.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I find them really easy to follow along with.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
The next one that I chose was Every Last Fear by Alex Finlay. This one is more of like a thriller, like mystery. And the reason that I chose this one was because even though it is like, it's fast paced and it's adventure packed, it's easy to follow, and it felt more of like a Law and Order, like a Law and Order SVU episode, like more of like a crime show type of episode. Whereas like I didn't have to like kind of figure it out necessarily, like think too much into it. And I just feel like anyone could get into this, whether like instead of just all of the romance heavy or like the easy fun reads, this was more like you could just pick it up and if you wanted a nice little thriller or mystery.
Yeah,
So
that's fun.
I chose that one.
The next one I want to talk about is Spilled Milk by K.L. Randis. I think I've talked about this once, maybe in like a wrap up, but I haven't talked about it since. It's something, this is probably the only one on my list that's really heavy. But this author wrote this book based off of her life. She was severely abused and neglected growing up, and so it kind of follows her a bit through her childhood, her reporting her abusive father, and then her going through the court process to get him arrested and imprisoned for what he did. And the reason I feel like it's easy to follow is because she's writing it from her point of view as she was experiencing it. So once again, very easily digestible and really important to read. I think it's especially important to read right now because this author, I follow her on Instagram, she's actually going through a really hard time right now. She was just diagnosed with like a really rare form of lymphoma. And so she's battling cancer right now, and she's got 2 young children, and I think, you know, a good way to support her would be buying her book. But also I'm suggesting it because I do really like it. I've read it myself, I think last year or the year before, and I do think that it's something that everybody could read.
I don't know that I think you may have mentioned it once on the channel.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to read that.
You do. It was, I really...
I just wrote it down in my notes.
I don't want to say I enjoyed it because like that's kind of a weird to say about a book like that, but
yeah.
It was very well written and very easy to follow.
Understandable. The next one I chose was Blurred Lines by Victoria Ellis. I adored this book and could not put it down once I started it. It's a beautiful little rock star romance that I love.
You love a good rock star romance.
Girl, I eat them up. Like, my favorite. But it was really easy to read, and just I loved the little world she created. It was very close to my heart. So I think that anyone would enjoy this book.
It's very good. The last one I have on my list is one that I just read recently a couple weeks ago, and it's Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This came out pretty recently. When I picked it up, I looked it up on Goodreads and it had like under 1,000 ratings, and now it's got like over 25,000, so it's kind of blowing up a little bit, and I can absolutely see why.
Okay.
Up until the last 3 chapters, this was a 5-star read for me. I loved it. The ending pissed me off.
Okay.
But it's very well written, and it's like The Summer I Turned Pretty meets People We Meet on Vacation. Because it's
that's
that
an interesting combo.
I actually think you would like it. I think you'd be pissed off by the ending too, but I think you would like it. It follows these 2 characters, and once again, it's like a dual timeline. The chapters switch back and forth, and it's these 2 characters that met at a lake house when they were children, and it follows them through the process of falling in love, and then you meet up with them again years later after they've broken up, and you kind of have to follow that timeline to see what happened between them. I think something like that is really, really fun and fast-paced. I read this in just a few hours, so I really think it would be great for people who want like a nice summer romance read, but you know, don't read very often. That would be a good one.
That sounds like a good one. The last one I want to talk about is Reconstructing Amelia by Kimberly McCreight. This is another kind of psychological thriller. This one I really liked, and I feel like would be a real easy read to get into because there's a lot of the book that is talked about in like email or like social media form. So it's like Facebook posts, which are not actually Facebook posts, they're like from a school website, and then like email form or text. I think there's some text form in there too. So it's kind of a cool way that the story is written, and it's easy to read, and it really pulls you in, and there's definitely different point of views throughout this book. So you get like the mom's point of view and the daughter's point of view, so you get different perspectives through this book, and it was really interesting. It was really easy to read, and it just definitely pulled me in. It's very interesting.
I like dual point of views too for people who don't read often, because I feel like you then understand the story a little bit better and understand the characters and their motives and why they make the decisions that they do.
Yeah, it definitely it adds more to the story,
Yeah.
and you're kind of not like just kind of floundering around with a bunch of different theories.
And I feel like
what
when I
might be
made this
happening.
list, I focused on not adding anything that was like written in third person, not adding any like fantasy, things like that could be hard for people to follow.
Same.
Just because I read for a long time before I could like delve into those kinds of books and actually like have them keep my attention. And so I think that these are all really good for people who don't read a lot, but maybe want to get into reading, or maybe just like want a book to pick up.
Yeah, like an easy Sunday read or
Yeah.
something. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. So that's what we have for you today. Comment down below, hit that like button and subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when we post next. And we will see you next time. Bye.